Hi, I am Amitav Acharya. Most students of Asian politics and international relations have heard about the Asia-Africa Conference held in the Indonesian town of Bandung between 18th and 24th April 1955. Attended by 29 nations, the conference discussed cooperation among the countries of Asia and Africa, their social, economic, and cultural problems, problems affecting national sovereignty, racialism, and colonialism, and the contribution of Asian and African nations to world peace and cooperation. The Secretary-General of this conference was Dr. Roselan Abdulghani. At the time of the conference, he was the Secretary-General of the Indonesian Foreign Ministry. Later, he became President Sukarno's Foreign Minister and the permanent representative of Indonesia to the United Nations. On 22nd April 2002, I had the privilege of interviewing him in Jakarta. Dr. Roselan was 88 years old, frail but in good mind and spirit. Our conversation lasted for about an hour. During the interview, I had the opportunity to ask him to reflect on several issues about this conference. Why did Indonesia organize this conference? What were the main issues and themes and debates at this conference? How effective were the procedures adopted by the conference? What was his impression of the key personalities attending the conference, such as Jawaharlal Nehru of India and Chou Enlai of Communist China? And what is the main legacy of the Bandung Conference? In the interview that follows, Dr. Roselan provides clear and insightful answers to these questions. What comes through is one of the finest diplomatic histories of that time, provided by one of the most distinguished and ablest diplomats that the developing world has ever produced. You can start talking. You can tell me something about why Indonesia decided to organize this conference.
Well, as you know, in 1953, 1954, we faced the danger of the spreading of the Vietnam War to Southeast Asia. And we felt that as a danger. Secondly, we were fighting at that time against the Dutch colonialism about West Area. It was a tough struggle. And we were of the opinion that colonialism is an international problem. So the fight of colonialism should be also fought on an international level. That means that the Asian African countries who were at that time still colonized should be mobilized. The third is that we would like to have an economic cooperation between these countries who are not yet largely technically developed. And lastly, there was President Sukarno's dream in 1930-32 during the colonial period, when he said that the banteng of Indonesia, the bull of Indonesia, should cooperate with the lembu nandi from India, with the barong, the dragon of China, with the tiger of Philippines, with also the white elephant of Muang Thai. And if we all cooperate fighting against colonialism, then we will win. And therefore, this idea of having a conference of Asia and Africa was based on motivation of the situation at that time, but also of a dream of in 1930. In the Colombo Conference between the 5 South Asian countries with Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and then Burma and Indonesia, then we have that idea that we would like to invite also China. And so this was discussed, not only China, but also the other countries who are more or less involved in the Cold War, because we know that between the Colombo powers at that time, there is the problem of Pakistan and India. Pakistan is a member of a military alliance, while India is reject any military alliances. So we know that, and therefore when the Bandung Conference was opened, 29 countries were there. So you have in the ranks of the 29 countries, you have countries who are members of a military alliance, and you have also countries who are neutral, means non-aligned. And so this problem came up because in one of the resolutions we talked about the right of defense. And then it was a very tough bargaining to come to a balanced decision, especially the verdict. And then later on come to this, the right of self-defense, singly or collectively, is recognized. That means Pakistan, Turkey, and the other countries who are members of the NATO or SEATO, we recognize you have the right of self-defense collectively, but we should prefer you have right of defense also, individually. So therefore, the wording is the right of self-defense, singly or collectively, is recognized, but there should be an abstention from the use of military alliances to serve the particular interest of the great powers. So that was a big debate. And then Nehru and Indonesia and all the countries who are against the military alliances, he said that, well, all right, you have the right, self-defense collectively, but you should abstain to use that military alliance for the special interest of the big power. And Pakistan cannot say that they are serving the interest of the big power, because always Pakistan said, no, if we are member of the SEATO, we are for our own national interest. So that is a compromise. And that is what one of the delicate problems in the conference. So that was solved. And you know that there was also solved the problem of communism. Because we invited China, and China is a communist. And China is considered to be an annex of Moscow. But in Bandung, there came other opinion, especially from Nehru, especially also from Indonesia, especially from China itself. No, we are communist, so as I recognize. I am a communist, but that does not mean that we follow everything what is Moscow saying. And so then came the label that China communism is different than the Moscow communism. And therefore, when Sir John Kotelewala come with the idea that there is a new form of colonialism and the relationship between Moscow and East Europe, so he said, no, that is not colonialism, that is up to them. And so in the debate about this problem of colonialism in all its new forms,
Please.
there was a very interesting debate about colonialism in all its forms, because the idea of Sir John Kotelewala was that communism is colonialism in another form, and that is what is rejected by Zhou Enlai and also by the other people. No, you cannot say that communism is colonialism. But how to solve this problem? Because we said that we don't mix up in the problem the relation between Moscow and the eastern countries. That's up to them, but we don't want to be mixed up with that. And then said Zhou Enlai, if you would like to have colonialism in all its manifestation, then I agree. And he used his hands like this, showing to the conference, look, this is colonialism. And the manifestation is in a political field, on economic field, on social field, on ideological field, and so. But this is manifestation. So if you change colonialism in all its manifestations is an evil which should be brought to an end, then I agree. And so we come to this delicate problem, to a compromise. But anyway, everybody knows that we are treading very delicate problems. But anyway, that was the success of the Bandung Conference, to eliminate sharp conflicts of ideas and then to come to a compromise. And that is because the rules of procedures make this possible. There is no fixed rules of procedures. It is up to the chairman to conduct the proceedings, the debate, on a very wise way, and that's avoiding voting. So, how will you come then to a decision? By consensus. And that is a very, very interesting problem. But I think Indonesian society in the village, we never used also voting. We used discussion, musyawarah, and then we come to mufakat. Mufakat means consensus. So that means if you have two different opinions, then you cut off the sharp points of both so that you come then to a compromise. And so the final communique of the Bandung Conference actually is full of compromises. But without compromises, how can you come to an agreement between 29 countries? And that is nearly half of the world at that time, because the United Nations at that time consists of 16 countries membership, and 29 countries were invited.
Do you think this idea of a consensus was Indonesia's idea from Indonesian village culture, or you also thought this is the most practical way?
Yeah, we suggest that.
You suggested, Indonesia suggested.
We know that the other countries also agree. that it should become to consensus like the Islamic Arab countries, because then these are also in the Quranic verse. You know that what in the Quranic verse is always said that you should come always to an agreement, Of course, you have different opinion, but if you have different opinion, try to persuade each other with reasoning and with a very kind of thing, So be patient, but think of the time. That is what the Quran said, you cannot just talk months about this. So we said also, of course, we should think of the time. And therefore, you should come to a decision because the situation is very dangerous at that time. The situation of the Cold War. And one of the results of the Bandung Conference was the Cold War can be avoided from Southeast Asia, spreading Southeast Asia to South, and also to the Middle East. That is what I think the most greatest achievement of the Bandung Conference. And the idea that the world is not divided only into blocks. Why should the world be only divided by a liberal democracy with capitalism on the one hand, on the other side an authoritarian communism with an atheistic ideology? And why should only that be the world? No. And we said there is a third world. The idea of the third world come up actually in the Bandung Conference. And then we said, if you see what is the West, the West is divided in Moscow and in Washington. Both are of the West, because both have the glory that was the glory that was Rome, and then that was the glory that was Greece, and that was Christianity. But we, what you call the East, we have the cradle of religions, the cradle of philosophies. The big cradle is like in Mesopotamia, in the Ganges, the Indus in India, and then you are on the Nile, and that is non-Western. So why should we submit to the idea that the world is only divided into these two blocks, and that there is no alternative? You must choose, or you are of the better. No, we will not choose. We will choose for ourselves, and that is the idea what is nurturing in the Bandung Conference, and later on it is materialized in the non-block movement.
Okay, can you tell me something about the role of China, especially Prime Minister Zhou Enlai?
It is very interesting, because first we thought that Zhou Enlai must be a hardliner. Hardliner in the sense, well, he is a communist, and he admit in his speech that I am atheist. He said that we were all frightened, but we respect his openness. But he said, while I am an atheist, we, Chinese communism, we respect religion. And we don't want to have a religion war. And we are not against religion, but religion should be fighting against colonialism, because colonialism is against the religion and against on our communism. That was revealing, I mean, of the man. This man is very tolerant. And then he said, don't worry about me. I am an atheist, but it doesn't mean that I'm not recognizing, respecting religion. In my delegation, there are Muslims, and he took Muslims in his delegation, and he showed them. And look, this is what we mean with the peaceful coexistence. We differ, but we have a peaceful coexistence. We will not quarrel over this problem, but because we are facing colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism, and so on. And that is what Joe and I, revealed to us, which actually was not new, because Nehru has also this idea. Ali Sastro, but that it comes from the man. We thought that he was a hardliner. That was revealing. And during his role, he was very, very cooperative. When he listened to the speech of Sir John Kotelawala, and then he said, it was already in mid-afternoon, so to speak, and then he said, we stopped and said, they went to Sir John Kotelawala. Sir John, are you expecting that I am fighting against you? No. Sir John was amazed. I said, no, I would like to see your text. I will reply tomorrow. But I am coming here not to quarrel with you. I am coming here to come to a peaceful settlement of our ideas. And that is what, the whole conference respected this attitude of Joanna. And then later, the next morning, he made a very short speech. He said, I have listened to, but I disagree, but I have talked all to Sir John Kotelawala, and then we talked about that. And Sir John Kotelawala later on said, that is what he is not meaning that about Chinese communism, but is it called?
He said that again.
And very constructive.
Very positive role and very constructive role.
One thing he is adamant, he don't want to recognize Formosa, Thailand. He is the man of the one China policy. And he knows that the second fleet of the American Army, he is around there. And he knew this, he said that. No, we cannot accept a two China. That is his only stubborn, if I may use the word, stubborn attitude to him.
There was a compromise on the question of military pacts and also on the question of colonialism. Now what I want to ask you is that do you think that compromise, that military pacts collectively or singly is okay, but should not be used for the interest of a superpower? That formula, that compromise, did it have an impact on the fate of Seattle later? The countries that sort of got the Asian countries to think that military alliances are not good?
Yeah, look, Saudara Amitav, of course, we know what will be the attitude of these two big powers. But we said to them, look, our position, if there is a Cold War problem, because one of the purpose of the Asian African Conference is to view the position of Asia and Africa in the world today. That was one of the purpose, you have four purpose, but one. And then they say, we view our position between this Cold War. If there is a problem of Cold War in Korea, in Vietnam, in Berlin, then our position is mediation. We try to mediate, and that is, don't use nuclear weapons, don't use force, try to. If it comes to colonialism, then we are fighting against colonialism. So then we told to the big powers, look, if America is supporting colonialism, then we will fight against America. If you also, Soviet Union, if you are supporting colonialism where in East Europe there, then we will fight you. But if it comes to the problem of Cold War, we will mediate. That was clear. And so these two big powers beginning to think about it.
How about the question of sovereignty and the principle of non-interference, non-intervention in internal affairs of states? Was there a lot of discussion?
Oh yeah, there was also discussed, and we reject any intervention, in the internal affairs of other countries. But of course, the big problem is the economic problem, because we were all from the third world. We were all, but we urge an oil policy, because we know that we have the most countries have oil in Middle Eastern and the Middle East and here also. And so the idea of having an oil producing organization later on is the OPEC. Was the seed was in the Bandung Conference.
Okay. The question about Nehru's role.
Well, Prime Minister Nehru has a very, very leading role. It is not only because he has such great charisma, but he is actually considered as the man who is the forerunner of the freedom movement of India and so on. And so he mastered the English language, he mastered politics, and he knows all the tactics and strategy of the Great Britain colonial policy. And that is reflected in his ideas when he is talking about this. So his role is a very leading role. That is what I can say. And he is a senior man. Of course, he is always criticized by Muhammad Ali. That does not make any sense, because we know these two are brothers who are fighting always. So we try to mediate that. Now the problem of the impact of the greatest impact of Bandung was the non-aligned conference. And this non-aligned conference, they have membership. It started with 24, later on 50. Now it is still. That is one of the relevance of the Bandung Conference. If you ask me whether the ideas at Bandung is still relevant today, well, mostly it is still relevant. But we should also understand the changing of the world. So not all you can use it, but still the basic thing about peaceful coexistence. Now, the people said now, well, the Cold War is over. All right, but there is a new war coming up, and that is the war between the highly developed countries and the still countries who are underdeveloped. And then that should be bridged. And that is why we ask now about that problem, the problem of technology and so on and so on. So I think the peaceful coexistence idea, I think that is still relevant today. Even now, what is coming now? Today you have the problem of Zionism against the Arab world and the Islamic world and the third world. And Zionism is not only Israel, but Zionism has also its root in America. Its root in, so that is different than anti-Semitism.
Yes.
But still, that's a problem today. If you ask me how to solve this, you can still use some parts of the ideas in the public.
My one other question is, did it have an impact on ASEAN? Later on, when Southeast Asian countries, led by Indonesia, decided to have their own regional organization, ASEAN, did Bandung, the process, the principles, had any impact on Indonesia's involvement in ASEAN?
Yeah, I think ASEAN has its history. ASEAN has its contribution to the problem of stability in Southeast Asia. But later on, you know, it becomes too limited. So I think ASEAN must expand its membership. And therefore you have now the APEC, you have now the problem of new regional cooperation. But I understand that the original APEC members, original ASEAN members would like to keep that ASEAN idea, but you cannot keep it limited.
But what I was asking you also, that the ASEAN also operates on the basis of consensus, musawara, mufakat. ASEAN also operates on the basis of consensus principle. And ASEAN is also trying to develop some form of, in the 1960s and 70s, it had a policy of neutralization of Southeast Asia. So do you see that some ideas of Bandung actually had impact on Indonesian foreign policy and in the foreign ministry? And when then Indonesia became member of ASEAN, Indonesia was trying to make ASEAN in the same mold as the Bandung principles of consensus.
Yeah, that is true. That's true, but that is true. But you know, it depends on the cabinet in Indonesia whether it was intensive enough or just superficially. So we have times that there was cabinet in Indonesia who is only superficially doing that. But there are times that we are going to be intensive. Look at the period of Suharto. Suharto is committed to ASEAN because ASEAN was the birth, reasoning of ASEAN was to keep the peace in this area and not to be a communist organization. But later on, he cannot control, you know, the influence of China. But China changed also. So therefore, that in the later period, Suharto is going also to China and so on. Then you came the Habibie period. Habibie period is too short. You cannot say what is, but that came Gus Dur, Abdurrahman Wahid. He is going to try to intensify again the ASEAN, but he is now away, and then came now Megawati? I don't know. Well, here next there is the foreign minister, the new foreign minister.
His office.
Yeah. He came sometimes here because this is his building.
Oh, okay.
He came here sometimes. Then I asked him well, he talked to me as a senior person, and then his staff also. And then I asked him, what are you doing? You cannot keep ASEAN the way how it was. you have to move. And the world is moving to a larger regional cooperation.
Let me just say, okay, now you can start. Please, yes.
Yeah, in that case, we are also very clear to Japan line. We would like to see don't interfere in Nepal, don't interfere in the border states there and so on. That is what we talk to Anai, because colonialism is not only the monopoly of the West, but also of the East. But he understands that, and therefore he later on invited me to go to Ulaanbaatar, to Outer Mongolia.
Okay. During the Bandung Conference, Nehru said that if you join a military pact, that you mean you degrade yourself. That the countries who have joined military alliances are not very sovereign countries. Now, is there a sense that if countries like Pakistan or Turkey, Thailand, or Philippines also join military alliances with the U.S., and use the alliance to use it against other countries in Asia, that means they are not acting as sovereign states?
That's true. Therefore, we added to that right of self-defense collectively that you should abstain from the use of collective military arrangements for the specific interest of the big power.
Thank you.
Of course, that is just a formulation, to caution them. Don't be used by America as a weapon against other countries. You can read it in the 10 Principles of Bandung. That is the right of self-defense, singly or collectively, is recognized. But you should abstain the use of collective military alliances for the specific interest of the big power.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure meeting you. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks.
And I hope you would remember this, and I will be able to use your comments for my paper and my book, and I will give you. I really thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure to help you.